then you have to say, what is this saying about God?
Yeah.
I'm not asking that, and this is a kind of rhetorical question, but and one to think about, because nobody has God in a box. And if I think I know God, I don't. I know what my image of God is. And things like this will come in to try to help me grow, help challenge that a little bit, in the best sense of that word.
When life throws a challenge at you, one thing is certain. To find a resolution for every issue, every problem, for everybody, there's more than one way.
So here we are for the second part of our parable series.
Yeah.
And I just want to remind everybody that parables aren't really trying to get us to figure out what's right or what's wrong, what's good or what's bad. It's really not getting into kind of that dualistic nature of living. Parables are trying to get the reader to look at the reader's self.
Yeah.
Or the listener to look at the listener's self. Just want to keep kind of reiterating that, because many people turn to Scripture to kind of get an answer.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not that you can't get an answer from this, but the answer is kind of going to be about you.
And it may take some work.
Yeah, definitely. It's going to take some work, and especially on one like this.
Yeah, this is a good one.
Right. Right.
It's a challenge for sure.
Yeah. So, what do you think? You think you want to read this one, or tell it, read it, and then retell it? Because I've got an idea, so I shouldn't even have said that to you.
Let's go with what you're thinking.
Yes, I'm thinking of something. It's like, hey, I want to lead you right to where I'm going. So I kind of want to help everybody get into this by really, really trying to identify with the characters in the story.
Okay.
And as a way to do that, I want to kind of take the story piece by piece and just see how that feels.
Okay.
And if anybody out there wants to turn this off, sorry about that. Give it a try. If you have the urge to turn it off, fight that urge and stick with us, okay? So the way the Scripture does it, or says it, is like this. So then Jesus said to his disciples, there was a rich man who had a manager, and charges were brought to him that this man was squandering his property. So he summoned the manager and said to him, what is this that I hear about you? Give me accounting of your management, because you cannot be my manager any longer. Then the manager said to himself, what will I do now that my master is taking the position away from me? I'm not strong enough to dig, and I am ashamed to beg. Okay. Let's leave it right there.
Stop right there. Okay.
All right. So in your mind, Whitney, representing every single person who's listening to this.
No pressure.
Yeah, that's right. What do you think the rich man is like? What pops into your head, or what image do you get about the rich man?
I think he seems that he's about accountability. He kind of expects this person, probably others as well, to play the role that they were hired to play. Sounds like that he has enough wealth or accumulation that he needs help managing that, keeping up with it, and making sure that everything is going well. So the way the story is told, someone comes to him and says, hey, this is not going well. You need to talk to the manager. So he brings him in, and he asks him to account for him, basically says, you can't be the manager anymore. Tell me what's going on.
Okay, so he's a guy who holds people to account, and he's been financially successful enough to need people to help him take care of his stuff.
Yeah.
Okay. Anybody come to mind in our day and age?
Like that?
Yeah. I mean, it's fair to say no. But
yeah, no, I mean, I think that I don't think that's an unrelatable situation at all.
Yeah.
As far as people that have wealth and success and have people that work for them to help them maintain that. And I don't know of any specifics right off the top of my head of a specific person.
I was doing this with a group, and one person said the rich man was like John Dutton from Yellowstone.
Okay.
Does everybody know that show? If you're out there and you know that show,
Yellowstone.
just start thinking of John Dutton and think, well, is he like this rich guy, do you think? Do you know that show?
I know the show, but I haven't watched it, so I don't know.
Okay. Well,
what his character is like.
I've seen the show, and yeah, I could see this guy being that at this point in it.
Mm-hmm.
At this point in it, you know, he's holding this manager to account. So for me, he's a good man, and he really, really, in a way, is kind of giving the manager a wake-up call.
Yeah.
Giving him an opportunity to kind of look at himself and say, man, what am I doing? What's going on with me? And so forth. All right. Now, what about the manager?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think I can definitely see where he would be anxious and nervous, kind of being called to task for what's going on. Whether we don't necessarily know whether he was fully aware of that or not.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Mm-hmm.
It could be that maybe just things had gotten out of control because he was doing so much,
Right.
or maybe he was doing it intentionally. We don't really know. It doesn't really say
Mm-hmm.
what his intent was.
But what comes to your mind? Who comes to your mind? What type of person comes to mind? And I'll give you a little help if you want it.
Sure.
Okay, so this falls on the heels of the parable of the prodigal son,
Okay.
and that's one that most people know. The younger son who goes off with his father's money, but that's now his, and squanders it.
Yeah.
Is what the story says,
Mm-hmm.
and it's a similar words used to describe what the manager has done. He's squandered the money.
Gotcha.
Does that help any? Give a picture of the guy?
I mean, maybe it's someone who likes the fact that he has some power.
Oh, okay.
And maybe he's wielded that power, enriched himself, maybe in the process.
Uh-huh.
You know, maybe he took a little off the top
Okay.
for himself, potentially.
Okay.
Maybe not. I don't know.
So maybe he skimmed some money for himself.
Maybe.
Who would do that?
Yeah.
My gosh. What kind of a human being would ever do something like that? It's a good thing it doesn't happen anymore, right?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Right. Okay. So it happens, right? So maybe
Sure.
something like that happened,
Yeah.
or maybe he just made bad deals.
Yeah. That could have happened. Yeah.
You know, maybe he thought he was going to make money and he ended up losing it.
Yeah.
I think a lot of the squandering for me is he wasn't really paying that much attention to it.
Yeah.
He was kind of
that's a good point.
loosely just kind of tossing it around.
Yeah.
You know, so no real sense of consciousness around how to use.
Maybe a lot of short-term decisions.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that ended up not going well,
Mhm.
and not really maybe thinking about it all that much. You know, because it wasn't his personal money. It was right.
Yeah, it was someone else's. Yeah.
Somebody
So
else's.
Maybe
Right.
the impact definitely wasn't the same as it would be if it was his.
Yeah, maybe not. Maybe
Yeah.
not. Because as the story goes on, we're going to see what happens when he has to really make a decision about him,
Mm-hmm.
not about his boss.
Yeah. Okay.
Right. So does that give a picture? Does that give a sense?
Yeah, that helps.
Are we kind of into this story a little bit? So he says, so my master's going to take this position away from me. What am I going to do? And here's within the context of the society of the time is what he sees as his options.
Okay.
Okay. His options are to dig, and he says, I'm not strong enough to dig, so go out and do manual labor.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And I'm ashamed to beg. So those are the two options he's got.
Oh my goodness.
Right?
Yeah.
So in a sense, it's like neither are good.
Right.
his back's against the wall.
Yeah.
Can you relate to that?
To having my back against the wall?
Mm-hmm. No real good answer.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Right?
Yeah.
What's that like?
Oh, man. It's heavy. I mean, I think it's intense when you're in that situation where you know, or you feel that no decision's a good decision. You know, and you're kind of trying to weigh out which one is the least destructive. But it's,
which is the least.
I mean, you're in a situation where you just feel like you can't win.
Yeah.
So you question your future and your past and yourself, all of it.
All of that.
Yeah.
And it all spins around usually in our minds.
Yeah.
You know, whenever I've been in that place, my mind takes me to all these places, right? These horrible, horrible places.
Imagine
usually.
all the scenarios.
Yeah. And then I start thinking, well, then I've got nobody else to blame but me, which is a horrible thing.
Yeah.
Right?
That's cruel.
Yeah. I mean, it just feels terrible. So what are you going to do in a situation like that where it doesn't seem like, your life is on the line in a sense.
Mm-hmm.
Is to me is what
his
the
livelihood.
story.
I mean, what's he going to do?
Yeah, what's he
if
gonna
he
do?
can't do those things?
What's he going to do? He's going to, from our perspective, the way you might see it is he's going to end up homeless and maybe doing really hard day labor, or just relying on the generosity of the people who happen to walk by him that day.
Right.
Not much of a life.
No, that's hard.
That is hard. Okay, do you have a sense maybe then of being in the manager's shoes?
Mm-hmm.
How you feeling about the guy right now?
I feel compassion toward him.
Oh, okay.
You know, just with the idea of whether he did or didn't do something intentionally or not. I mean, he's in a bad spot.
Yeah.
And, you know, it's got to feel isolating, you know, with the idea of just sometimes when you're in positions like that and you know that your own actions maybe got you there, you're embarrassed.
Yeah.
You know, and you feel like even the people you could reach out to, you feel like maybe you don't want to because you don't want them to think bad of you.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. So it's just all that stuff going on if you think about that. It's making my stomach hurt just while we're sitting here.
Yeah.
So then he says, well, I know what I'm going to do. I know what to do. So that when my master fires me, people will hire me. The way the text goes, it says people will welcome me into their homes. But essentially that means they'll give me a job.
Yeah. Okay.
And then I'll have a place to live. So he gets all the people that owe his boss/master money one by one. And he goes up to the first and he says, how much do you owe my master? And the guy answers, 100 jugs of olive oil. So the manager says to him, take your bill, sit down quickly, and make it 50.
Okay.
So he owes him 100.
Yeah.
Cuts it in half.
Yeah.
All right. And he's doing this so that when he gets let go, maybe this guy will say, oh, okay.
He was good to me.
He was good. Yeah, right. Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
Then he asks another, how much do you owe? And he replied, 100 containers of wheat. And he said, take your bill and make it 80. Not quite as much, but still.
Yeah, still.
Right? Okay. Now you're the rich guy. You're the manager. You're the rich guy. You're the dude.
All right.
And this has happened. What do you say when you find out? What do you say to the manager when you find out?
That he is lessening what people owe me as the rich guy?
Uh-huh.
I don't think I'd be too happy with that.
To put it mildly.
I'm already frustrated with him for having squandered.
Right.
And now he's doing, it seems like he's doing it even more.
Right.
You know?
Right. And if that's where the story went, where the rich guy comes and goes, what the heck?
Yeah.
Right? Not only am I going to fire you, I'm going to have you arrested.
Yeah.
We could end this podcast right now and go home all feeling really good that we would have done the same thing.
Yeah.
And he would have got his just desserts, that manager. But here's where the parable twist comes in. Okay? So the master finds out.
Okay.
And what the text says, his master commends the dishonest manager because he acted shrewdly. So he's praising the guy because he acted shrewdly.
Okay.
And this is the crux of the parable right here.
Yeah.
So all of you out there listening, if you're still listening, get into like how you're feeling. How does this make you feel?
That he's praising
the guy for lessening the amount of money that the guy's going to get that he's owed.
Mm-hmm.
And he's praising him because, like I said, the text used the word because he acts shrewdly.
Yeah.
Shrewd is a heck of a word.
That is.
Right?
Oh,
when you hear the
goodness.
word shrewd, what do you think?
Oh. Yeah, that's a good one. I almost think of like conniving in a way.
Right, conniving.
I don't know. I mean,
in a bad way, conniving?
Could be. I mean, I think for me, I've usually taken that that term as a negative term.
Right. Okay. So it can be seen as negative, and I think a lot of people can see it as negative.
Maybe somebody that's calculated.
Yeah, yeah.
With the idea that they're really finding creative ways to look out for themselves.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and then you have to decide, is that bad?
Right.
Because the master doesn't think so. Once again,
interesting.
All right. So if you were to look up what the word shrewd means, just Googled it.
Mm-hmm.
By and large, it's going to pop up kind of clever.
Okay.
With the ability to kind of deal cleverly with the daily ins and outs of life.
Okay.
Right? So how's that sound?
That doesn't sound as negative.
Yeah, so
as maybe I was thinking.
It's not as negative of a thing. But if you want to bring the negative back in, for us, the word shrewd is used in the Adam and Eve story to describe the way the snake is.
Yeah, I was going to say that word pops up throughout the scriptures,
pops up.
Different places.
Right. And so in another place in Matthew's gospel, Jesus says to his disciples who he's sending out into the world to be with people, he says, now I'm sending you out into a really difficult place.
Mm-hmm.
So you're going to need to be as wise / shrewd as serpents and as innocent as doves.
Interesting.
Right?
Yeah.
So trying to open up this idea that maybe shrewdness within the ins and outs and dealings with people isn't such a bad thing.
Isn't negative.
And that's certainly what this is implying.
Yeah.
To me, anyway. To me, so this is where I get hung up. This is where most people are going to get hung up.
Yeah.
Because it looks like he's just being praised for cheating.
Mm-hmm.
And he's not. That's not, to me, what the story is saying. To me, and everybody's going to have to decide for themselves. But to me, what the story is saying, no, he's praising him for being really clever. So here's a guy whose back was against the wall. He had no real choices. And he comes up with something really clever, really bright.
Yeah.
Right? And
using what he had to use.
Yes, using what he had to use. And so I say all that, but yet I still feel bad about this.
Yeah.
Right? It still feels bad. Okay, so what am I going to do with the feel bad? And instead of me asking you, I'm going to tell you what I did with it, okay?
Okay.
Okay, so because I walked around with this for a while because it's troubling. One thing to do with something like this when it's troubling is to try to twist it and make it fit what I want it to say. And if you need to do that, go ahead and do that and see if it works for you. Okay, doesn't work for me because once again, I think the parables have a lot of wisdom. And they're trying to help us.
Okay.
So I'm going to come at it from that place. And that I'm stuck here, to me, is showing me.
Okay.
Right? And the way that I go about life. And so I'm starting to fade into, when I'm in this place, a real self-righteous place. I would never do anything like that. I would never do that. How could he do that? And then how could this guy praise him for that?
Yeah.
Right? I just can't believe it. He's not even being honest. Okay? So I'm fading into that world.
Okay.
That self-righteous world of just pure, I see clearly and I get to judge. All right? Man, when I'm in that place, usually things break. Okay? And so what broke as I was walking around trying to think through this was that very self-righteousness and my need to feel like I'm somehow or another pure.
Okay.
And so I'll tell you a story that really, really popped up to really show me this. Okay, and it's very personal. I'm going to try to shift it a little bit because I don't want... this isn't about anybody but me. Okay? Yeah. So just keep it at that. So I was on a board, and I'm the worst board member in the history of the world. I'm just going to say that. I'm a terrible board member. I don't get them. I don't like them. But I was on this one because it was for a swim team that my kids swam on, and I felt like I needed to give back. Yeah. And everything was really kind of just boring, as boards usually are. As I've said before, they're aptly named. And so I'm everything is just kind of going along in this swim team. And then all of a sudden a section of people, kind of parents and then people on the board, were getting really, really frustrated with the coach and wanted to fire him. Mm-hmm. And I'd gotten to know the coach pretty well, and I liked him a lot. And not only just liked him, I thought he was doing a really good job. And by all objective measures, he was. Mm-hmm. The team was doing well. Kids were going off to college to swim, oftentimes to big schools. They probably would have never had a chance if he hadn't helped them, is the way I saw it anyway. Mm-hmm. So I didn't want him to get fired.
Sure.
And there were 9 people on the board, and it felt like it was almost kind of split. But I thought we were being honest with one another when we met at the meetings to talk, because we had more than one meeting a month now. We were having meetings quite a bit to try to talk about this. And in my own mind, I thought, well, everybody's being above board, and we're talking about this, and we'll work through it. Mm-hmm. And then one day when it came down to the time when we were actually going to vote for the guy, I had a really busy day. I wasn't really paying all that much attention to what was going on. I thought we would be able to talk through this and see things at least as close as possible, and that the guy's job would be saved. Mm-hmm. But as a little bit into the meeting, what I recognized is 5 of the 9 people, I could tell were answering everything almost exactly the same way. Mm. And I thought, they've been talking to each other outside of these meetings. And the other 4, we had not. Okay. So they were extremely organized and ready when it came down to the vote. Yeah. And they won. And he got fired 5-4. Mm. Okay. One person of the 4 quit because she felt it was just so wrong. Mm-hmm. And so she had to do what she thought was right. I didn't want to quit because I thought, well, I want to help him at least get a really good severance or something, and help with that, which he did. And but the part that fits with this story for me is they did it better. Those 5 people.
They did what better?
They played the situation better. They saw it clearer, and they got what they wanted to happen by engaging one another outside. They didn't do anything wrong. Okay? Mm-hmm. But it took me a long time to see that, because when it first happened, I felt very self-righteous. They duped me. Yeah. They did it. They were wrong. They were bad. Mm-hmm. But as time has gone on, and then this parable forced me to see it in another way. Mm. And that was, they were shrewd. They were clever.
And they worked within the system.
They didn't break any laws. Yeah. They didn't, okay? They worked within the system to get the outcome that they thought was right. Yeah. And that was humbling. Today, just 2 days ago, when this story really kind of hit me, and I thought, yeah, that's exactly it. Because as this thing goes on, he says to him, "For the children of this age are more shrewd in dealing with their own generation than are the children of light." Okay? So the children of light are people like me. oftentimes, who want to do right thing or following a spiritual path, in this instance following Christ, and are trying to live from that place of goodness and love and joy and that whole thing, that whole world, right? And the children of this age are people who are more adept at or living in the day-to-day world.
Interesting.
Within the system that they're a part of.
Right.
Okay? So it's like those 5 people. They saw what I'm going to call in many ways the game. They saw the game clearer than I did.
They need it, yeah.
And they played it better. And I don't know how that sits with you. Once again, you're going to have to look at life and look at yourself and say, how does that feel?
Yeah.
And there's a part of me that still feels like
especially when somebody's job is on the line.
Yeah, that feels wrong.
There were stakes at play for sure.
No doubt about it. No doubt about it. But the societies that people live in are organized in a particular way. And what stories like this I think are trying to get me to see it clearly, so that you can play it as well as you can play it. And sometimes the people that you can learn from are the people that you might think are shady.
Interesting.
Right?
Yeah.
Because I thought those 5 people were shady.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
But no. Not in that instance.
Yeah. They were operating within the confines of the system. Yeah.
That's right. That's right. So for all of you who are pulling your hair out and screaming right now.
Yeah, so thinking about this, like you said, I've kind of been walking around with it as well, thinking about the story. And it brought up a story that I had heard one time on another podcast that really hit me, especially thinking around cleverness or shrewdness. And so the way this story goes is there was a gentleman who lived in the city, and he was going to move to the country to have a different kind of life. And so he had bought a large property and was working on putting that together, and decided that he wanted some animals to put on the property. So he was looking for a place to do that, and came across a gentleman that had a donkey for sale. So he reached out to him. He said, I'd like to buy the donkey. Can we kind of negotiate a price? And the guy said, yeah, about $100. And he's like, yeah, that seems fair. $100. I'll come pick it up and take it over to my land. And so a little while later, they connected. He went over to go pick up the donkey, and the guy that owned the donkey came out and said, I've got some bad news. The donkey died. So I'm not going to be able to get the donkey. And the guy was like, oh, that's terrible. I hate to hear that. If you'll just give me back the money that I paid, and we'll be even, and I'll go on. And the guy said, well, I don't have the money. I kind of already spent it on some other things, and I feel really bad about that, but I don't have any way to give you your money back. And so the guy that was looking to buy the donkey was thinking about that, and he said, well, I paid for the donkey, so give me the donkey. And the guy's like, what are you talking about? The donkey's dead. And he's like, no, give me the dead donkey. And the guy's like, oh, okay. What are you going to do with it? And the guy's like, oh, I'm going to sell it. He's like, you can't sell a dead animal. And he's like, oh, yeah, I can. So the guy took the dead animal and decided that he was going to hold a raffle for a donkey. And so he went around and he sold tickets for people to be able to buy a raffle to win this donkey that was already dead. So he's charging the tickets, going around, and he sells a ton of tickets because they're very inexpensive. I think he charged maybe $5 to try to win a donkey, much less than he had paid for it. So when it came time for the raffle, he drew the winner ticket out and said, okay, this is the person that won. So that person came to contact him, and he's like, I've got some bad news. The donkey died. And the guy's like, what do you mean? He's like, yeah, it's like just happened. The donkey died, and but feel bad about that. So I'm going to give you your money back. In fact, I'm going to give you double your money back.
$10.
$10. So he gave him back $10. The guy was like, I didn't get the donkey, but I didn't lose anything. I actually made some money out of it. So he went on his way. And so the guy that had the dead donkey recouped all of the money he had spent and a whole lot more through the raffle. Yeah. Just from a clever idea. And so he took something that was already dead and created a way to still earn money from it.
Oh, wow. What did the podcast say about that? Do you remember?
I don't remember. I just remember hearing that, and it was told as if it's a story that's told often and has been kind of told through time about
Yeah.
clever ways to deal with a situation that might seem like a disappointment.
Yeah.
And that to me, I was blown away really with the idea of, man, that was really clever.
Yeah.
That was super clever, you know? And
Yeah.
it wasn't like I was like, that guy's terrible,
Yeah.
you know? I mean, obviously he knew he couldn't deliver what he was proposing,
Right.
but he didn't necessarily lie about it. He just didn't share all the facts
He
about,
didn't
you know,
share the
so you
whole
get into all
truth.
the weird,
Yeah.
you know, nuances about it. But
Yeah.
it made me think about this manager in this story with the idea of, is what he did kind of the same,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
I mean, he just kind of, in the way that you're talking about it, you know, he found a clever way to ensure his safety beyond losing his job.
Yeah. Yeah. You find out a lot once again when your back's against the wall.
Yeah.
And you have to come up with something. And yeah, who knows what if so to speak, the rich guy in the story, maybe he would say the same thing to that guy. Wow, that was
Yeah.
clever.
Yeah.
Wow, you know, I'm just going to come back to it. If the rich guy had come to the guy and said, "How dare you do that? How dare you be dishonest?"
Mm-hmm.
It would make perfect sense to basically almost everybody.
Yeah.
But it doesn't say that.
Right.
It says just what you said about that guy. Wow, that was clever.
And it makes me think, how many times do I think I know how God's going to behave?
Yeah, that's right.
When that
That's
isn't at all what he has in
That's
mind.
right.
Or he's like, that's so small.
Right.
That's so cute.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
If you only knew.
If you only knew. And once again, like a story like the donkey, it's trying to help us see things in a more expansive way.
Yeah.
That's the thing about the parable. See, it's hard. I'm not saying it's not hard, but I think that's the wisdom of it. Because like I said at the beginning, it's trying to get me to look at me and you to look at you.
Yeah. It's definitely not neat.
It's not.
It's messy.
It is. And it's one that you can, as the other one was last week, and most really good parables that you can come back to over and over again and really find your way in it. All right? We live in what this parable, where this parable took me is we live in systems. All societies are systems. All life has systems. And those systems are in place to try to help us live life better or make life more enjoyable, convenient, all that kind of stuff. All societies are in place for me. This thing takes me to help us do that. He recognized the framework of his society and the choices that he had and came up with a third way.
Yeah.
Okay. I think that invites us to do the same.
To be shrewd?
In the clever sense.
Yeah. Okay.
To know what you're dealing with, to have your eyes wide open as to what you're a part of, and to live into that as best as you can.
Yeah.
As cleverly and as wisely as you can, while at the same time living from a place of compassion and joy too. To me, that's the other scripture passage from Matthew, being wise as serpents and gentle as doves.
Yeah. So
Right?
how do you do both?
Yeah, that it's doing both.
And maybe it's in different times. Maybe different situations call for different.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe. So for me, within the context of that swim thing, is my gentleness and kindness was there, but it was there for the coach.
Right.
He needed me to have a little bit more shrewdness.
Okay. Yeah.
Because so that he could have his job, and he deserved to have his job as far as I was concerned.
Mm-hmm.
So how could I have made that? At least been a part to try to.
Yeah.
Right. And it doesn't do any good to get self-righteous about this stuff.
Yeah.
It never has done any good for me.
And I think you had said earlier as we were discussing this, you talked about just kind of the illusion of our own purity and self-righteousness.
Yeah.
A lot of times we think we are, but we kind of know we're not.
Yeah, I'm gonna make a maybe it's a bold statement, I don't know, but it's a statement, and it's, if you're living in life, you're not pure, because this is just the way life is.
Mm-hmm.
And then you got to come to terms with that.
Yeah.
Which brings up a whole nother set of questions that we don't have time to deal with right here, right now.
Yeah.
But I do hope that this sparks some kind of questions in people, and that you bring how your sense of what these people are like, and where this parable takes you, because maybe we're not seeing the whole thing.
Yeah, true. And I think some of it, what you're bringing to it, your own feelings about wealth and power and justice and all those things. I mean, you're bringing that into it when you read it or listen to it.
Yeah.
And that shades it, that colors it. That's where we get into that kind of piece like you talked about, where I'm gonna make it mean what feels right to me.
Yeah.
Or I'm gonna put on God a behavior that I think God would take.
That's right.
That's right. And that's funny, but it's funny because it's true.
Yeah. Yeah, because if Jesus is using this parable to kind of show God and God's relationship to life and human beings, and the rich guy represents on some level God, then you have to say, what is this saying about God?
Yeah.
I'm not asking that, and this is a kind of rhetorical question, and one to think about, because nobody has God in a box.
Yeah.
And if I think I know God, I don't.
Yeah.
I know what my image of God is, and things like this would come in to try to help me grow, help challenge that a little bit in the best sense of that word.
And you could come at it from an angle that maybe the rich man in this situation saw something in the manager that he hadn't seen.
Yes.
Before. Maybe in this circumstance, the manager took initiative and got creative in a way that the rich man had said, I wish you'd been doing that all along.
Yeah, maybe.
So
that's right.
Maybe the loss of the money was not as much as being pleased in that change in the person.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah. That it was worth it to him.
Yeah. That it was worth it to him to see that, to see him to step up and to care enough to take a crazy action.
Yeah. Thank you for listening to this episode of the More Than One Way podcast, brought to you by the Center for Spiritual Practice in Knoxville, Tennessee. We really appreciate your time and would love to hear your feedback. You can reach us by emailing hello@morethanonewaypod.com, or you can connect with us on social media using the handle @morethanonewaypod. If you found this episode helpful, we hope that you'll share it with your friends, with your family, with people you work with all the people who you know. Thank you, and take care.